We are going to be talking about the brain, and we are going to be using a very easy model to be able to understand it. It's called the hand model of the brain by Dr. Siegel. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I'm just going to link it somewhere down below so that you can go and research about it. And so we are going to be looking at its different parts, its different functions, and how it influences our responses. So now, according to Dr. Dan, the hand model of the brain looks like this. So when you use your hand and you put your thumb at the lump of your hand, and then you fold down these fingers, these 4 fingers over the thumb, then this becomes the hand model of the brain. Now, this part becomes the brainstem, whose function is for involuntary functions like breathing, digestion. The one you don't have to think about it. It's just like it's automatic. And then now this part becomes the amygdala, which is part of the limbic system. So this is whereby it's like another name is the emotional nervous system. So this is where emotions and emotions reactions takes place. And the limbic system has other different parts like the hippocampus, which is like the library of the brain where the memories and all that are stored. Yeah, but now for now we are going to be dealing with the amygdala. So now when you fold, or when you place these 4 fingers over the amygdala, so this front part becomes like this front part. So it's like the prefrontal cortex. So this is where decision making, critical thinking, planning takes place. And then above here, it is the cerebellum. So this is where the high functionings of the brain and the sensory activities really do take place. And then at the back of your hand, it is the cerebellum, whose function is about posture and balance. Now, today, for us to understand in terms of our emotional responses, we are going to be dealing with the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. Now, like I said, the work of the amygdala is concerning emotions and emotional reactions. So it is not like it is a threat detector. So when stress happens, when a trauma happens, when something happens, is the one that first detects the threat. So we feel first before we are able to think. That's what I'm trying to say. So we feel first before we are able to think. So this one is activated first, or it's triggered first before the prefrontal cortex. Now this is what happens in the brain when a stress happens, when an event happens. And for example, we have said you feel first before you're able to think. So let me give an example with what? Let me give an example with public speaking. So you have been given the role, or you are supposed to deliver a speech in one or another in a platform. So what happens the first time when you maybe get into the stage, or when you're preparing, you feel anxiety. Now, when you feel anxiety, that means a threat has been detected. So either you are afraid of people, you're afraid you're going to say something wrong, or these other thoughts and the many other things that are going on in your mind. So you start feeling anxious, you start feeling fear, and also all form of emotions. Or also in one or another, you start feeling a sense of shame that you are either anticipating it, or emotions that you're anticipating, or things that you're anticipating might happen. So when it happens and you're able to regulate your emotions, and we are going to be talking about regulation in the next video, but when you're able to regulate your emotions, then the prefrontal, when you're able to regulate your emotions, even though the threat has been detected, the prefrontal cortex will still be able to control and regulate the amygdala. What do I mean? You'll be able to think clearly. One of the ways you regulate your emotions, maybe it's by deep breathing, or you ground yourself and try to see, what can I see, what can I hear, or in different ways you're going to be able to regulate your emotions. Then the prefrontal cortex is going to be in control. That means you'll start being able to think clearly, you plan clearly. So by the end of the day, you'll be able to deliver your speech. Now, on the other hand, if you are not able to regulate your emotions, or when you are at a space where there is a lot of emotional overwhelm, then the lid will flip. That's what we mean. Like the lid will flip. This now becomes like a lid, what I'm trying to explain. So it will flip. meaning now the prefrontal cortex, you being able to be in good judgment, and in terms of being able to either what you say, in terms of now, in other way, when the lid flips, that means the prefrontal cortex is no longer in control, the amygdala is in control. So that means now majority of or in that specific scenario, the emotions take over, unlike you being able to just think about it. So it looks like during that time when you're standing there to say a speech, either you might now faint or shut down because now of the emotional overwhelmed in terms of the nervous system, or you can just decide to not do it or run away, or you find yourself stammering, in all those kind of things. So that means the emotions have taken over. So the amygdala is the one that is in control and not the prefrontal cortex. Now that's when we say that the lid has flipped. Now this is one thing that I would like you to understand. So for us to be able to, which is the statement I'm going to use in English, like to get the lid down, for us, for the prefrontal cortex now to go back being in control over the amygdala, because it's one of the functions also of the prefrontal cortex is to control and regulate the amygdala. Now, for us now to come back into a state where we are able to cope, we are able to be in control, we are able to critically think about it, majority of the times we really try to force down the lid by either to really try to force it down by being either trying to be intellectual about it and all that. However, the most important thing is for you first to create space for the emotions. You know, sometimes, let me give other examples first for when the lid flips, is when maybe you are in an argument. Yes, I know there are emotions there, but you are still at a point of where you can cope. And someone maybe mentions something like, oh, you need to stop being too sensitive. What happens? You flip your lid. Now you no longer want to say things that make sense. Now you're ready to attack, you're ready to defend yourself in one way or another. So that means your emotions, you feel like they are parts of you that are either being misunderstood or they have not been heard. So now for us to be able to really return back the lid, or to be in a space where we can critically think on how we will feel, on how we will react, on how we will respond in any way, it doesn't start by you trying to force yourself to really think critical. No, because the moment you try to force yourself to think critical, don't forget that the amygdala is already in a place where it has already recorded or it has already received threat. So no matter how much you try to really force yourself to critical think, the lid will continue flipping. So for us to be able to be in a place where now we can be a place where we can cope, like the window of tolerance, you know, where we can cope, where we can be able to make the right decision, we can sit, we can think, we can, you know, we can plan and all that. For us to be able to be in that state, it starts by us being able to regulate the emotions. Because the moment we regulate our emotions, automatically the prefrontal cortex is going to return back and be able to regulate the amygdala. So it starts by emotions first, so that you're able to critical think, not the other way around. Every time you will find ourselves either overriding our emotions or repressing them, in one way or another, we will continuously find ourselves the lid flipping. Even, for example, in terms of what some of us do, like spiritual bypassing. When spiritual bypassing, this is where you use either scriptures or spirituality or way of life, instead of using it to attend to your wounds, to attend to your wounds in terms of healing, you use it to cover. What can I say? For example, you have lost someone and you're dealing with grief, instead of you really going through the process and of grief and feeling your emotions and crying, you really want to stand strong and feel and believe that they're at a better place. So every time you're going to override, what is going to override your emotions, what is going to happen is that your lid will always be flipping. So you'll not be in a state where you can make better decisions, or where you can really direct, be in control of your response, but now your emotions are the ones that control your response. And these are times where you find yourself wondering, I didn't understand how I did it, I didn't mean to do it, I didn't want to do it. Why? Because at one, maybe you didn't create space for your emotions to be heard and for your emotion to find a place of safety. And so what happened? The lid did flip. So we need to be able to understand it starts by emotions. First, being able to regulate our emotions, because we feel first before we think. And then automatically we can the lid can go back and cover, or the prefrontal cortex, this part can go up and cover the amygdala. So we need to also be able to understand. That's why we see even children and teenagers. The prefrontal cortex, this front part, the part that we use to think and plan and everything, takes a longer time in terms of development before the emotional part, like the amygdala. So these ones are the ones that grow faster before more than the prefrontal cortex. And that's why, for example, like a little kid, even though they feel hunger or they have woken up at that particular time, and maybe they can see maybe their caregiver is doing something, they don't have time to start thinking about, oh, I can stay, I can wait, and try to critically think everything that is really happening. I can wait until she's done and then she can give me food. No, they automatically start crying. So they are driven so much with emotions compared to critical thinking. And even us, when you are in adolescent stage, or if you are in adolescent stage, you'll find yourself majority of the times you react more from a point of emotion than from a point of being able to critically think what you're doing and your consequences, so that you may make a better decision. So just remember, emotion first. We feel first before we think. So it's going to be very important for us to start by tending into our emotions, because the more we learn and we become emotionally intelligent and we tender into our emotions, the easier it is for our prefrontal cortex to really cover the amygdala and regulate it, so that we may be able to critical think. And so a verse that I was looking into is the verse, I think, in Psalms 46 verse 10, that talks about, be still and know that I am God. So be still and know. What is that verse trying to tell us? Every time that you really want to know something, it doesn't start from the knowing part, it starts from the stillness part. So it is be still and then you know. Being still first and then you know. So that means first being at a space whereby you will be able to first regulate how you feel. And the more you are becoming skilled in terms of regulating how you feel, then the easier it is for you to be able to think clearly. And you see, this is the way that God really made us. And that's how he really structured our brain. So we need to be able to understand that our emotional health is going to be very, very, very important in terms of what we are going to be, in terms of in association with mental health. So please remember, you first be at a state you regulate your emotions, and then when they subside now, you are going to be in a position where you can easily now come back and be able to make the right decisions. So ensure you be still first and then you know. I hope that has been very, very helpful, and the hand model of the brain is really easy to be able to understand how our brain functions. And I know there are different ways we can be able to use it in terms on how to understand the brain, but I really wanted you to show you how our emotional health is very important. And that's how God structured it. The more we are going to be able to understand the different parts of our brain and how they have been structured to function, then the easier it is going to be for us to be able to take care of our mental health. So I urge you, as we move on after you listening to this, try and practice so much to be in tune with your emotions. I feel like emotions are some of the things that we have been always told to push away and to push aside. But I think it's very important to bring them in, because the more we bring them in, the more we are able to be people who are going to be act better, and also to be to be really healthy mentally. So until next time, bye.